Okay, welcome to the Band of Brothers podcast. I'm here with a really great old friend of mine, Mark Pepper. How you doing, Pep?
Doing great, man. I'm really honored to be here. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your story with the guys and gals and whoever's
Yeah.
listening to this. And I met Pep back in man, May or June of 1999. I went to the Fellowship Hall, Honey's Breakfast at 6:30 a.m. and I met Pep there, and we've known him, man, 25 years, dude. Wow.
That is so beautiful. What a run we've had.
Yeah. I remember Honey's because it was in, I call them the good old days when you could smoke in AA, and we'd sit out the meeting outside and we'd watch the sun come up Immigration Canyon, right? And I think that's Immigration,
Hmm.
right? Yeah.
That's immigration. Those were
And it was
lovely
a great
times.
way to move to Utah and get to know people like you. So
Thank you.
thanks for being on again, bud. Appreciate it.
What an honor. Thank you.
You bet. Well, let's just start at the beginning. Tell us about the first time you ever put a mind altering substance in your body. How old were you?
Hmm. Well, so the home I grew up in, ceremonially, we drank wine on Friday nights. And so I don't remember the first time I drank wine, but I drank wine as a little boy. I'd
That's
probably,
either Irish or Jewish.
yeah, correct. One of those two. Let me profile.
Sorry.
Um, Irish. I so I don't remember the effect, or I didn't. I'm not a kid that's like I sipped it and I chased it. I did. I liked the effect. I know that. My family gave me paregoric as a medicine. I liked that. I pretended to be sick at times so I could get some of that. I didn't know it was why I liked it.
Yeah.
Um, and probably at 13 years old, in between maybe sixth and seventh grade, a buddy of mine and I stole some old times whiskey, I think, from his parents. And we had a little bit of frozen limeade and we got drunk. And I loved it. I loved it. I got sick. I spun around. I tipped over and I woke up with the splitting headache and I could not wait to do it again. Kind of the sport
Tell me
we
though
did.
about like the first time, the first feeling you got. Can you describe
So
that?
I just met this kid. His name was Kevin. He became a good friend of mine. And we were just trying to figure out how to connect with each other. And I was sort of a chameleon as an elementary and junior high kid, trying to figure out where to fit in. I was athletic. I was smart. I'm not LDS, and I tried to fit in with the Mormon kid. Just really wanted to fit in. I didn't know that.
You grew up in Utah,
Grew
right?
up in Utah, Salt
Yeah.
Lake, and I met this kid, and we decided we were going to try alcohol, and we just met. And I don't know that I had a best friend yet at that point. And the night we drank, I had a best friend, and it was him, right? Because he liked to drink like I did, and we drank and did a lot of drugs together for 20 some odd years. He passed away 8 or 9 years ago,
Mm.
but we had lived together as adults. We spent a lot of time together, and we were connected by drugs and alcohol. So I
Mhm.
felt connected to him, and then we started getting other friends that wanted to drink as young teenagers, and I felt like I had a friend group that I could be myself with, and I felt comfortable, and I felt at ease, and I felt I laughed more. I was more playful. I thought it was funnier. And, just this,
Mhm.
it's sort of garden variety as I tell it, but for me, it was pretty profound.
Yeah.
I have two sisters, neither of whom are alcoholic. I have two parents, neither of whom are alcoholic. I was adopted into that family. Later in my early mid 30s, I found out my biological mom was an alcoholic. So there's that biological feature that we know about.
Mhm.
Science tells us that the genetic piece that I got, and I was raised in a home exactly mostly like my sisters, um, and I'm the alcoholic, and I was
Mhm.
born. My DNA is different than theirs, and so I appreciate that discussion. That's a part of it, right? And not everyone that has the DNA turns out alcoholic.
Right.
So,
So I know there's a physical effect we get, but what feelings like did it help medicate or maybe
well,
bury
sort
or
of the
maybe
inadequacy that I didn't know this stuff at the time.
yeah.
Um, I think it was the loneliness and the aloneness that I didn't have a best friend. I had moved in sixth grade to a new school across town and felt out of place there. I think my athletic ability kept me somewhat plugged into some guys,
Hmm.
but also being Jewish in Salt Lake did not feel very good.
Hmm.
Didn't, and I was really proud of it. I still am, but
Yeah.
uh, I wouldn't. I don't think everyone knows that about me now. Well, they will now because I just said that. But I was. My sisters and I were very proud, and we were very devout, religious kids. We practiced Judaism quite actively up until my bar mitzvah, which is like just after this time I drank. So
Is bar mitzvah, is that 12?
13, I was a little
13.
older. I was 14 when I had mine.
Okay.
I'm a slow study at times.
Okay.
Learning Hebrew is not very easy. Uh, but I realize now, like I had a version of God. I was pretty clear on God as a kid and as a young teenager. And then I found a new higher power. None of this did I know at the time, but marijuana and alcohol became my new higher power. I felt the connection spiritually that I was looking for religiously in
Hmm.
substances. Again, I didn't know any of that. I look back and I see the timing of all that. It's not coincidental that I got sober and stopped practicing Judaism, or I mean, I started drinking and using and stopped practicing Judaism.
Right.
I think there must be a correlation there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So how did that progress through high school? And how did that
um,
affect your life in high school?
yeah, so through high school, I became more known as like the stoner crowd. I started doing cocaine at 15 and I didn't stop that till I was 39. I don't know that I had a drug of choice, but cocaine is at the very top of the list with alcohol.
Hmm.
Um, and I was kind of a mystery to like I had a goal to get some girls to try cocaine. So kind of a kid that your parents might not be thrilled to have your kids around, which had changed because I was a friendly guy and I've always been a nice kid and a nice guy. But it got a little darker when cocaine was introduced. And
Hmm.
um, I was sort of proud of the fact that I was a stoner, rocker, druggie.
Hmm.
It's embarrassing to say that out loud, but um, it wasn't very, very big secret at East High that Mark Pepper drank and did drugs, and you could probably get some drugs from him, and you could probably share some of his alcohol.
Yeah.
Um, and I played
Because
basketball
you were
in
on
high
the
school,
tennis team, right? I mean, you
tennis
were an
team,
athlete.
basketball team. Uh, in the early stages, it worked beautifully. Cocaine's a real nice stimulant. I mean, till it's not.
Right.
So I didn't really have problems with cocaine till my late teens or early 20s. But I started stealing from my dad to get money for cocaine and started selling it. So my self-esteem was dropped. I knew this wasn't the path for me, but I was kind of hooked
Hmm.
at a pretty early age. I had people tell me as a junior in high school, as a sophomore in high school, you got to drink and you got a problem, dude. And I'm like, yes, I do. Here I go.
Hmm.
Sort of a badge of honor and kind of cocky and not, it's kind of embarrassing, but it's the story.
Yeah. So what happens after high school?
I go to my first college, Eugene, Oregon, and I'm a senior in high school when I go to Eugene, Oregon. As I finished school early, I was always still pretty smart. Um, and I discover mushrooms and LSD. I'd discovered them before, but not like this. Quaaludes were a big part of that period of my life. And after a year in Oregon,
So you were a duck.
I was a duck, and I walked onto the tennis team like I was still athletic. I made the second doubles team of the tennis team. I was a D1 quality tennis player. Really had a good game going. I remember Playboy comes out. It's a magazine. I don't know who's heard of it. It's great articles. It's known for its good
Incredible writers.
journalism. It's known for its journalism for sure. But they used to have the top 20 party schools in America.
Hmm.
It was a feature they had in the spring, which is why I bought this particular issue for sure. And the number one parties, and I said, I'm going to go there. I'm going to transfer to that school. And it happened to be University of Colorado in Boulder.
Mm-hmm.
And so I promptly transferred there and then went to school there for the next couple of years.
Pac-12 still, right?
They were not in
Oh.
the Big 12 then. They were in the Big 12.
Big 12, okay.
Big 10, Big 12, Nebraska, Oklahoma conference.
Okay. Big
And
12, yeah.
it got darker and deeper. I lived in a fraternity house with 70 guys that drank and did drugs, mostly like I did. It was acceptable. It was expected. I had a lot of money. My dad kept funding me. I manipulated out of a lot of money over the years. Again, embarrassing to say that my dad's my hero and like the greatest man I've ever met. But I couldn't stop drinking and using, and I really loved the effect. The camaraderie I had with the guys I partied with was unparalleled.
Mm-hmm.
We were boys, man. We had made it to Colorado. We were fraternity brothers, and we were in it. And
Were you going to school? Like, were you
excuse me?
were you going to class? Were you
I got a degree.
okay.
Um,
From Colorado?
no,
Okay.
there's 3 more colleges involved. Um, so at 20, I had decided I needed to get sober.
Wow.
That was
Okay.
the first time I'd said to him, like, this is really a problem. Like, you're a mess. You should move to London and get sober. It's a perfect response.
Yeah.
And I moved to London and worked in a pub and smoked opium and drank as much alcohol as I could consume and had a jolly good time. And came back and went to Boulder and kind of partied my way out of my fraternity. Went back to the U, where I'd gone a little bit as a senior in high school.
University of Utah.
University of Utah.
Okay.
And I ended up having, and this all might not be true. This was a long time ago and very addled by drugs and alcohol. But I somehow I got a job in the Bay Area still in college, but I was going to take a correspondence course from San Francisco State University. I had one more class to get my English degree. So I took that and I got my degree at the U, which of all the schools was where I went. I went to Oregon and Colorado more, but my undergraduate diploma is from the U. I'd lived in the Bay Area. I was training guide dogs for the blind.
Mm.
My depression had started really bubbling up in Oregon, and in Colorado it was going on, but in the Bay, when I got to the Bay Area, I didn't know anybody, and I was lonely and drinking a lot and isolating, and the depression started. And I have come to see my relationship with depression as very instrumental in my life, right? That turns out I don't have depression, but when you pour a depressant on your brain all day, every day, or a stimulant on your brain, or any combination, you're going to be depressed.
Right.
It's just what happens when you stop, when you run out of the stimulant or the effect on the brain. And so,
And you were living in some areas that the weather, like it rained a lot in Oregon. It rained a lot.
I love that. In Oregon, I would write poetry in the graveyard, like a cowboy hat and a bottle of Jack Daniels. Very romantic, just kind of a mess of a kid. But
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know any of this at the time. I was like, this is just my life. It's all right. This is my life. Um, so I'm in the Bay Area. I'm there for 4 or 5 years. I'm losing lots of jobs, getting lots of jobs, losing lots of jobs, following the Grateful Dead all around, having a really jolly good time with that. Like
So
that was,
what year are we talking?
we're probably talking 86, 88, 90,
Okay.
that period at the end of the 80s. I got my DUI in the mid 80s
Okay.
in San Francisco. Only had one. I only drove drunk like 15 years every day after that.
Let's back up just 1 second. How long you said I'm gonna go to London to get sober. How long did that commitment last?
Well, I made it to Houston, from Colorado to Houston, and then from Houston to London, I had a slip that lasted 20 more years. I mean, I,
Okay.
I never really was sober. I look back at it, I never had a relapse. I don't think I gave it a chance enough. I never had
Yeah.
a period of sobriety that I would have relapsed on
Yeah.
over a hospitalization or a treatment stay.
Right.
So that didn't last. Um, None of it lasted. I moved to the Bay Area I kept having in my mind, I don't have any cocaine dealers in San Francisco. I should
Hmm.
be fine. Um, I, I saw cocaine as a bigger problem than alcohol. Any drug addicts out there, that's always
Yeah.
probably an alcoholic too. I don't know that. I can't say that, but I drank all the time, every day, all day. I thought cocaine was the problem because I see other people drink.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. When I moved from Dallas to South Dakota, I was convinced that weed was my nemesis, and so I left. I smoked my last joint, and I drove up, and then it was the Super Bowl, so I had my brother FedEx, one last one, and actually that was my last one of marijuana, and my drinking doubled, and my pill intake doubled,
right,
and
right,
it yeah,
right. I'm a substituter if I need to, for sure.
yeah.
So yeah, none of those experiments went well. And I moved back home to Salt Lake for a period because I was drinking too much and had family here. Moved back to the Bay Area. A lot of geographics to try to get better. Um, None of that happened. My last time in San Francisco, I met my first wife. And yeah, that was a disaster. I was not sober for any of it,
Mhm.
except my 28 days at Hazelden. Um, and that was in the mid to late 90s. So the early 90s were just dark, drinking a lot, lots of resources. I had a lot of money. My first wife's family was very, very wealthy. And I liked that because cocaine's expensive and travel's expensive and fancy cars are expensive. I had all that stuff.
And you're in the Bay Area.
I was back here. My dad had offered me his business. I was working for my dad.
Okay.
Um, Never happened. I worked there for, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 years, or I didn't work there for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Uh, he had to fire me. Like like that was a hard one to imagine, a dad firing a son that he loves and taking the keys and telling me to not come around.
Yeah.
Um, just it just kept incrementally, slowly getting worse. Um, So my first wife, we lived at the very top of the avenues in a very fancy, expensive home, and we bought a new Land Rover and a new 7 Series Beamer, and we're living like the outside was spectacular,
Hmm.
and the inside was brutal, really hard. And so we got divorced, and I went from that place to Pioneer Park in when I kind of connected with you at VOA in like a
And I
year.
was seeing you at Southside before that.
So I was going to meetings
Yeah.
from, I
So
just
was
moved.
your wife saying, "Hey man, you got a problem," or were you just like, "Man, I got a problem," or was your dad, or was it
Yep,
internal? Yeah.
yep, all of that.
Yeah.
Everyone around me, my sister did an intervention. which is when I went to my first treatment at Hazelden in the early 90s. My wife left. She kind of ultimatum me, like, me or the cocaine. And that's a bad question. You, that's a no-brainer for me. I
Yeah.
could live without you. I cannot live with that. And I might say it kind of smugly right now. It's
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
It's unimaginable that I would treat a human being that way, and that's the condition I was in.
Yeah.
And I understand that when people, like, I couldn't have chosen her over cocaine.
Yeah.
Wasn't addicted to her.
Yeah.
I could imagine living without her. The thought of no drugs or alcohol was unimaginable.
Yeah.
After rehab, right? And after interventions and after AA and after all that. So she left, and then I'd gone to Canada to try to kill myself.
Mm.
Was just going to drive off into the woods. I got as far as Evanston, Wyoming. And I ran out of blow. I got stuck in a motel for like 4 days. But I still went on the trip and didn't kill myself, thank God.
Yeah.
Um, but just the depression, the alcohol use, the loneliness, the darkness. I mean, Bill Wilson writes about it, just, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settles down, ever becoming darker. I'm like, like that's the story, right? And it's
Yeah.
years of this vapor of loneliness.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm going to hospitals. I got committed to a psychiatric hospital in Minnesota. Went to treatment there, lived in sober living at the Hazelden Foundation. Didn't stay sober at any, really. I mean, the commitment in the hospital was like 42 days. It's a long commitment for mental health problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably needed it. I think when you want to kill yourself as seriously as I did, I'm glad I was committed.
Yeah.
Um, and then I came out in the late 90s, and I met you, and I'd go to AA and want what you guys had, and I wanted to keep drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the double winner, the double magic, or what, I don't know what it was, but I could feel the fellowship beginning to happen, and I loved that. But I could do without you. I cannot do without alcohol yet.
Yeah.
So I remember living at Pioneer Park, and you and I spoke, and you were at the VOA, which is a low bottom county funded detox here. It's non-medical, it's just social
Yeah.
detox. And you asked me to come take a look at it.
Well, let's clarify. I wasn't a resident there.
Nope, you were working, you just gotten sober, I think, a year or so before that.
Yeah. 97.
Yeah, so you were 2 or 3 years sober, on fire in recovery. Great example of recovery. Your family relationships. I'd met your brothers. You were giving back. You were doing, and I remember looking at that room in the VOA of the beds, just like beds are lined up, and you write out your detox.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently at this point living in a Honda at Pioneer Park. And I remember, like, I'm not as bad as those losers
Mm-hmm.
that are down on the floor. Like, I got a car. I mean, the lack of perspective is amazing.
Yeah.
And
I
I
remember
get it.
you walking out of my office and down the steps because we were up on, and I just remember thinking, man, I hope you make it through this one because
Yeah. And
yeah,
and
and there's
you,
nothing you're going to tell somebody.
right.
There's nothing.
It's
I
so
mean, I wish there
helpful.
was something we could say. I mean, there are things we can say and we can love, but we all know, all of us in recovery know that that until that you get to that 51%, that 1%, I don't want to, like, you can yeah, you lose all these things, right? And temporal and family and freedom. Yeah. So how did it bottom out for you? What was the
Um, well,
moment of clarity?
so I don't know if you helped me or somehow I was turned on to the Haven, which is also a county funded low bottom. They take guys from the park and homeless shelters and prison. And I think you or Gary Ewers at the time, you guys were friendly, and he had said, you call this number and you get on a waiting list. And so I called, and there was a part of me the whole time that wanted to be sober.
Dude, you kept coming back.
For sure, kept coming back.
Honey's breakfast. You kept coming, and not only were you coming back, but you were coming back and taking newcomer chips.
And then some dirty
back and BSing people like, oh yeah, I've just been out of town, or I've like, you were authentic, man. You were real.
Well, that's nice. I was a real mess, but I was real.
But you were honest about being a mess.
Yeah.
And that was attractive to me about you. Like, I'm like, this dude, he just keeps coming. He keeps walking through the door.
I for sure I'm the guy that, like, when you say a prayer before a meeting for the alcoholic who still suffers, they work, you guys.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here because those prayers work. I believe that. Go to the Haven. You have to call. They tell you need 5 days sober. They don't want you detoxing there. I believed at the time if I had 5 days sober, I wouldn't need rehab. I'd be all better. Why would you go to rehab after 5 days sober? So I got there. I wasn't sober. I detoxed in the Haven. I came clean to them about 30 days in, and they're like, well, like everyone else, no big deal. Glad you're here. We like, oh, you lie? Yeah, you're an alcoholic. Of course you lied. So it wasn't that big of a deal. And then I got a pass, and I had moved there again, I had a car. I got a pass and called my cocaine dealer and got some cocaine while I was living at the Haven. And I'd say the last 25 or 35 days, I used cocaine daily in the Haven and did not get caught.
Wow.
And I graduated at the top of the class, 89 days, most likely to stay sober for the rest of his life. Like, I'm an actor, I'm a chameleon, I'm a liar, I'm a drug addict, a drug fiend, an alcoholic. And if whatever the situation calls for, I can adapt pretty well, right? And I'm sitting at the Haven feeling like you can't even stay sober in rehab. And I'd not stayed sober at my previous outpatient. This was my 5th treatment center, the Haven. But one thing the Haven gave was 6 meetings in the house a week and 2 outside of the house a week. 8 AA meetings a week for the 89 days I was there. And I met some guys, and every day at 10, they had a meeting. And there were these 3 like 6'5", well-dressed guys there at 10 a.m., like with jobs that are just coming to give AA. One of those guys has been my sponsor for over 20 years.
Wow.
It wasn't my sponsor, Brian Edwards.
Oh.
Met him at the Haven first time. And so I didn't stay sober, obviously, but got the taste of AA and went to meetings and took dirty chips after that Haven stay up till almost a year. And then I got found out, which is usually when I quit, when I got caught. And I'm back to the Haven and told him the truth. And like you sound like a drug addict. I thought, everyone thought about me all the time. The good news is nobody cares. The bad news is nobody cares. It's my life, and they love me, so I got honest in AA and struggled for a while. And I was about to go to a 2-year program in Prescott called the Prescott House in Arizona. That's of TC throughout for a couple of years. And this was in 02, 01. And I had a history of, like, I'd either meet a girl and know that would get me sober, get a job, or start a new workout routine. And any of those 3 things were sufficient in my mind to get me sober. So I'd met a woman, and I called Prescott House. I'm like, I'm fine, I'm not coming. And she had a little 6-year-old girl who I knew her. I was a counselor at a camp at the time, part-time, which is the way I worked. And this little girl and I adored her. God, she's just this angel of sunlight. And this woman was cute, and we're hanging out, and then we start living together, and I'm lying to her about my sobriety, and she's finding empty like liters of Jägermeister, and I'm lying on it. A leprechaun brought. I don't know how it got there.
Damn kids.
And she doesn't drink Jägermeister, and the
Yeah.
6-year-old doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I smell like Jägermeister all the time.
Huh.
And we end up getting pregnant. And I remember when she took the test, and she's like, I don't know if I even want to be with you. I don't know if I like you. You're not the kind of guy I want to be with. I couldn't blame her, and I probably manipulated her to hang around for another minute. And we went through the pregnancy. I lied to her the whole time about being sober, not being sober. And then she was about 7 months pregnant. The 9th of October, it was a Wednesday, 2002. And she left. She's like, 7 months pregnant, her little 6-year-old. She said, we love you. You can't tell the truth. I know you try to get so. I see you try and you can't. And you're one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Wish you well, and we love you, and you'll never see this child. And God bless you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting in bed. So I'd had a home at this point. It wasn't about him physically. She drove off, and it was a Wednesday. And I went to the Wednesday Foothill group that I'd gone to for a year or two. And I saw my buddies there, and they're laughing. They're like 8 or 9 months sober, on fire in AA, and I'm sad. She caught me again. I'm busted. I'm still drunk.
Mm-hmm.
They're laughing. They're like, come on in, Pepper, just come sit down and see what we're doing. And that's the last day I drank.
What day is that?
My sober date is Thursday, October 10th, 2002.
Well, congratulations.
21 years and some months. I think alcoholic adults are the only people that say like 21 and a half.
Yeah.
Normal people don't count their half birthdays unless they're like 4.
Or the super irritating dudes that say 9,000. I'm grateful to be 9,422 days, and then you spend the rest of the meeting figuring out how many
Right.
freaking years the dude has. Thank goodness for
So
calculators.
7,831 days, but it's because I have an app. I got sober that day, and there was alcohol in the house because my kid's mom drank. And
so did you plan to get sober that
no
day?
way. No.
Okay.
Women had left before, children had left before, ultimatums had been had before. This was just
what do you think was different? What do you think happened?
Well, so she was pregnant with a little kid, and I'd never been a dad. I'd not had a biological child, and I don't know any biological family in my world. I don't have a blood connection to a human being.
Yeah.
And this wasn't conscious at the time, but I fancied I wanted to be a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably should get my shit together if I'm going to be a dad and be sober.
Yeah.
Which is not enough to get a guy like me sober all by itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think the foundation of AA, I knew where to go. I had enough men around me that were like, I'm going to be your sponsor. You're going to work these 12 things. Let's get you going through the steps so you don't drink. And I had a sponsor right away, and we did the steps in probably 45 days.
Okay.
60 days, and all 12, and I didn't drink or do any drugs. And 2 months sober, that little boy was like my first miracle in sobriety. I was at the hospital, and he was born.
Wow.
And my whole world changed. And there's probably enough parents listening to this that we know the love that we have for a child. I've tried to love people that much. I just haven't been able to.
Yeah.
It's still that deep, right? And he's 21 and I'm 21, right? So I'm deep in AA. My first 5 years, I went to 10 to 15 AA meetings a week. I'm like Mr. AA, the poster boy of AA. I'm maybe 9 or 10 months sober, and I'm mostly not working a whole lot because I'm going to AA, and I'm okay with that, and um, family's coming back around, and um, I get a call from you. It was like 9 months sober, 10 months sober, I don't remember. And you said, "Hey, Pep, how about I started a treatment center. Do you want to come to a rec group on Wednesday? It's one day a week." I'm like, that is my kind of job. I am a good candidate for a one day a week job out in the hills. So I said, sure, I'd love to. And that was a Wednesday. And I remember we went to Brighton and we went on a hike. And I remember some of those guys quite well. And I talked to a couple of them occasionally.
Yeah.
And still sober, 18, 19. I mean, I don't, long time. Um, and the next day, Thursday, you called and you said, something happened with our house manager. We need a house manager. And I said, what does the house manager do? You said, oh, he cooks and fixes things around the house and is with them. I'm like, I don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll take the job.
Yeah.
And
Something you had zero skill set for. Yeah.
zero. But it turned out, from my recollection of that was the perfect job, and I was the perfect fit for you for the Renaissance Ranch treatment program that you were just getting going with what I
See,
brought.
the actual definition of a house manager is somebody that brings the spirit of recovery into the home every time, and you were perfect for that.
I for sure did that, and I was on fire, and I got the opportunity to help a lot of men that were really struggling with spiritual crises.
Yeah.
I don't have any relationship with Jesus Christ, and these men had, and were having these crises.
Yeah.
And I think I was just so grateful and blessed to be in that position. But I loved the ranch, and we moved to Draper, and then we moved to Bluffdale.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was with like I'm cruising around, and I remember one day in Park City, H's brother Steve Brown was the clinical specialist or clinician, and I had at one point drank and done drugs with Steve Brown, and he was kind of a knucklehead in my brain, like me, like I mean, he was just a regular,
Yeah.
and he's doing this great clinical work, amazing work. And I think I looked at him and I'm like, I bet he's making like $40 an hour, and I'm probably making $9.75. And so Steve Brown and Ren'ais'sance was the impetus for me to go to grad school. And I did all my education while working for you.
Yeah.
And just was just like the most magical time of my life. My kids were growing up.
You lost a bunch of weight too, like that.
Lost
You
about
got into
100 pounds,
biking. Yeah. Yeah.
80, 90 pounds. I was riding my bike and training for triathlons, and
Yeah.
the whole experience was so amazing, and getting really close to a bunch of the guys in the ranch
Yeah.
because I wasn't that far ahead of them time wise. Right, I was 2 or 3 years sober, 4 years so, kind of progressing. And this foundation of AA that I brought into the, I matched the program at the ranch was like we're doing the 12 steps or the solution, and we're tapping into the spirit and God, and how do we do that in any way possible? And really was like, and I'm not blowing smoke at you. That was just such a rich experience for me. The men I met that I'm still very friendly with a lot of them, and colleagues with some of them, and
Yeah.
on a podcast with one of them. I mean, these decades long relationships, right?
Yeah.
Um,
My wife still calls Park City our Camelot period.
it
Yeah.
was the greatest up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the greatest in Draper.
Yeah.
Just the growth and the learning, and I'm growing up, and I was asked to leave. I got fired by HR, and I don't know that that's the term we use, but I was let go, and I was surprised, and I remember this is recovery. Whoever's like, I remember thanking you and Steve and Chris for the opportunity to work at the ranch. I wanted to tell you something else, and I was terrified, and I was sad, and I was angry, and I remember thanking you guys for the opportunity to work there. I could just hear my sponsor or men in AA of like gratitude for the opportunity you've had.
Yeah.
And I tell you that because I got asked to work there later. Like I didn't burn the bridge.
Yeah.
And I'm good at burning bridges and blow torching houses to the ground.
Yeah.
And I left and we're all still friendly, right? I'm a little upset. I didn't understand, but when I see these guys, we're all still friendly. And I love that. That's not been my experience in my whole life. And I'm like 42 at this age.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've never left a job and never wanted to see anyone again. Or if I did, I'm ducking out. I've done some wrong. I owe them some, so I get my degree, I get my license, and I'm practicing clinician in the world. And I'm like doing a ton of AA the whole time. And I'm sponsoring guys. I'm sponsoring a guy currently who worked at the ranch the second time I went there, who
Yeah.
have called me every day for 10 years.
I hate it when people listen because it takes up a lot of
Of
your
the like
time.
150 guys I've had a lot of guys ask me to sponsor them. The 4 that keep calling are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really lovely. Um, but it's been a beautiful run. And at about 5 or 6 years sober, I got to adopt that little girl.
Oh, wow.
And she's my little girl, right? And she's 28 now and is like the most lovely beam of sunshine. I learn a lot about love and gratitude and acceptance from her. And what a dog. I mean, just who knew this was going to happen? I got to sit with my dad when he took his last breath,
Yeah.
and I was hugging him and kissing him. And my
Sandy was a special guy.
special guy. And when he passed, he had told my sisters a little while before this. I think I'm either making this up or it's true. I'm going with it. It happened, but he said the greatest thing that ever happened in my whole life was my son getting sober in AA.
Wow. Wow.
And this dude had a big life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my sisters didn't argue. They weren't like, "What about?" They're like, "Yeah, for sure." And I had stolen and taken a lot from that guy, and was asked to be the executor of his trust.
Wow.
And my sisters were like, "Of course you are. Like you're the guy that should be doing it." I talk about that stuff, about the transformations that we can have in recovery and in sobriety,
Yeah.
that all of my family relationships are clean right now.
Yeah.
Right. And none of them were when I got sober. And I made full amends to my family and I think if I owe any of you amends, let me know. Um, I think I'm clean with the world, right? I can walk with my head up and I can look people in the eye and I can say yes when I'm asked to do something. And I'm having the greatest experience of anyone I've ever met.
Wow.
And I know a bunch of men, and particularly men, that think the same thing.
Yeah.
And I love it. Like we're just staying sober a day at a time for the rest of our lives
Yeah.
and helping other people. And I am committed, my life's committed to helping other dudes and women. I want to help them find women that are helpful. But I'm primarily am in the business of helping men. And
Yeah.
apparently that's what I'm here for. I thought it was to get rich, look good, have stuff, all the outside stuff, right? And
Yeah.
it turns out that this is where this is the gold.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome, bud. Tell me your funniest maintaining anonymity. Tell me your funniest thing that happened at the ranch.
oh,
There's
okay.
a lot. There was a lot of pretty good stuff.
So let's just say, as we were kind of young in sobriety, really, I
Yeah.
mean, reflecting back,
Oh yeah.
you guys were 5, 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
We didn't know
2 or 3.
crap, dude. We didn't know crap.
And so we didn't allow caffeine at the ranch. This is in Draper.
Yeah.
And there was this second house above the garage. Nobody really watched.
Yeah.
You lived in the main house, and if you, I don't know, if you stayed there, if you didn't AMA before too long, you got moved up to the whatever they called it, the garage, maybe.
Yeah. It was like a sober living for the guys that were in aftercare for a minute,
I think
I
this is
think.
before that because these guys were still fully in treatment.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, I know the guys you're talking about. I won't mention their names.
I kind of wanted, but it
There's still
won't. Just
golf ball holes in the inside of the wall because they thought it was okay to slam a 5 iron
well, that's
inside.
one of the stories. So these
Oh, I'm
guys are like,
sorry.
no, I mean it wasn't that specific. But I walk in and they're like, they've got Coca-Colas,
Yeah.
and they're like, like just shooting the breeze. And Mark, and I got to say, when I was working at the ranch, I was kind of a hard guy.
Yeah.
I was the hammer,
That's why I hired you.
and I'm such a softie now. It feels good. I've evolved into being much more loving, and I appreciate having the
But
good
you
boundaries.
gave the men, you gave those particular men what they needed when they needed it.
Yeah, and
Because
I
you know why? They always knew you loved them.
and I was pretty consistent, right? I
Yeah.
wasn't like, I'm not interested in being your friend. I'd rather tell you the truth. And I got that from the men around me that were like, would tell me the truth about my relationships and how I treated people and my
Yeah.
financial amends. And I hated it at the time, and I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah.
But anyway, those guys were just, and I can see them now. I know their names. They just were super cool. One
Yeah.
guy had told us that he was the show horse of the ranch.
Yeah.
He just he would doll himself up like to get ready was an hour.
Pierre. Yeah.
His chest hair was just immaculate. Like this
Yeah.
guy was.
He's passed away.
I
Yeah.
imagine, right? And a bunch of them have. And I've gone to
Yeah.
golf tournaments and seen the wall and
Yeah.
and the legacy there. I see my picture on the wall occasionally, and I go to an alumni meeting or two. I used to go to more. Um, I feel beloved at the ranch, and um, I earned every bit of that, and I don't deserve very much of it because I'm
Yeah.
a regular garden variety dude. I think like you a little bit, H. I'm held in this esteem that is it's uncomfortable. I know it's there for a lot of, not for everyone, but oh, you're Mark Pepper. I'm like, yeah, okay. Um,
Or just Pep. Most people just know Pep.
and so, but the ranch has given me a connection with some men and I'm with one of them right now that are just unimaginable to a guy that really wanted to kill himself for most of his life, up
Yeah.
until 40. And I want to just say I don't want to swear. I'm so grateful and fortunate I didn't kill myself. I would have killed the wrong guy. I would have killed this guy, and I wanted to get rid of that guy. And I
Yeah.
hang in there and get help and ask for help and tell people if you're thinking of hurting yourself, it's there's no coming back and you're going to kill the wrong guy.
I've
And
never heard it put that way, dude. That's really profound.
I would love to take credit for it, and I'm not going to because I heard it at a meeting in Arizona,
Yeah.
a young speaker, and he was tearful. And this is the first time I've said it without crying, of like, he's just had this great recovery, like we're talking about. And he's like, I would have killed the wrong guy. And it's got, you hear things in A that stick. That one stuck. And we haven't talked much about God, and that's all I wanted to talk about. That's because that's about all there is, and that's the reason for all of this. And I like that I don't have to talk anyone into that I believe in God. I just know I do.
Yeah.
I love that about AA. You don't have to the width and the breadth of the belief is more than we could even imagine in our little brains.
Yeah.
And I get more evidence of that all of the time. If I'm looking,
Yeah.
if I'm looking for not that, I can find that all over the place, right? I can find like how horrible things are. I want to say one more thing. I think my son Max was like 15. I was a single dad for quite a while towards the end of his high school years, or junior high and high school. And we were home one night and he was about to go out, and he comes in my bedroom. I'm reading. It's probably 8 at night, which is when I'm most comfortable in bed. I'm about ready to call it a day. And he said, you know, Dad, I think that you think your life is so much better than it really is. He was right. I do.
uh,
I I think I spent 40 years thinking it was worse than it really was, that I was
yeah,
worse than it really was. And I've, as a result of working the steps and helping other guys and working in recovery, I think I've got the best life. And it doesn't look like that to everyone, right? But it looks like that to me.
yeah,
And, a new pair of glasses, right? I have had a profound alteration in my reaction to life.
yeah,
It tells us in the spiritual experience in the back of the book.
yeah,
And that can only happen with God's help. I mean, I tried to get that through chemicals and medication and combinations, and it's right. I think in AA they put the feed where the goat can get it.
yeah.
It's right here. It's
Yeah. Well,
this
the
is
cool thing is, you know, we've seen men lose everything temporarily, lose jobs and houses and families and freedom, and but really the men I see that stay sober hit a spiritual bottom, and
well,
and that's
yeah,
why the steps work, because it's a spiritual solution. And because, you know, we're pretty tough. I've seen a lot of homeless dudes, and
for sure.
you know, like all the we can lose a lot of stuff. We can bear it. We're resilient, and I'll just power through, or I'll let my personality or my brain or my body take over, whatever it was. But when we lose hope, I think is really when that change. That's what happened with me. That's
Yeah.
when it was like, I don't have anywhere to turn, so I'm either gonna die. It was like a Shawshank, like I'm gonna get busy living or I'm gonna get busy dying.
Well,
And I was tired of trying to kill myself,
I
whether I had a gun in my mouth or whether I was drinking myself consciously to death. It was like, this isn't. And man, I was trying to kill the wrong guy. I'm going to remember that, because that's
and I
really,
think the evening of the playing field, whether you have a house or a car, like you can for sure get sober with that stuff.
yeah,
And I'm not doesn't there's this weird sort of competition in recovery of like who has the worst story. That's weird to
yeah,
me, but um, I uh, the thing that we all mostly identify is how we feel in here.
yeah,
The bottom is the bottom. Like I can't stop. I can't not stop. I need help. I'm dying here, and I want to. If you're there, I would heartily say congratulations.
yeah,
Like um, if you're not there, you're probably maybe not ready. That was my experience. Like
mhm,
I still had another girl to meet. I still had another idea.
yeah,
I hope you're out of good ideas if you're just getting started.
yeah. One last big one. We used to call it the elbow. One last big one, and I think that's my point of the spiritual bottom is you don't. You can have a job and a house and a family still there, and hit that spiritual bottom and lose that hope, and know that I've got only one place to turn, and that's to my God, the God of my understanding, whoever that
Which
is. And
feels like the worst idea in the world. Like, is there anything else you can offer? Please.
yeah,
Well, that's what we're offering.
yeah,
And I heard that if God drives you out of AA, alcohol will drive you back in.
yeah,
Like you, if you're an alcoholic, you're going to end up needing a relationship with a higher power, I think, from my
yeah,
experience. And so I've embraced that. And I make no, I don't push it and I don't make excuses for it. I'm right. It's very personal, which I like.
yeah. No doubt, no doubt. Well, Pep, man, I could talk to you for hours, dude. Um,
Honored. It's getting dark.
um,
And geez,
yeah, we've got a big book study I've been doing every Monday morning. I'd love to have you join. It's at 7 a.m. So let me know if you want
that's a good time for me.
to.
It's almost lunchtime at 7 a.m. Geez.
But I just appreciate you coming on, and a lot of the 25 years I've known this guy, it's
Thank
just
you.
even when you were coming back in and grabbing newcomer chips, I always kind of wanted what you had. I wasn't quite like, I couldn't put my finger on it. But there was just something about you. And I'm so grateful that I've had this first 25 years, and that we've been able to stand back to back in the field together for a number of years. And
Yeah,
I don't even know what to say. You're just one of those uh, once in a lifetime people that I meet,
Lord,
that
thank you.
that
I
I
think,
I don't want to ever lose in my life. And the amount of people that you've helped, and the ripple effect of those men. Um, Luckily, we don't know what that is in this life, and that saves your ego probably. But I'm telling you, eternally, you're going to be pretty shocked at how many people come up and give you a hug up there. And
when I was almost interrupted you a minute ago, and I was just going to say that about you of like, I hope you know the effect that you having a connection with God has had on all the people you've helped. And I think of both of us. And I think once in a while that way of like, my drinking and using had a ripple effect on the people around me. And
yeah,
my recovery has certainly had a ripple effect. And
no doubt.
the great work you've done, and it's here we are, brother. Like, who can you imagine this like 25 years ago that we'd be like, this is just God, more evidence of a higher power for sure.
Yeah. Well, if you're around town April 3rd, I'm gonna go up to
Oh,
the loft and maybe grab a chip. I'd love to see you.
okay. I'll talk to you off this. I want to say one thing, and I've been on a few, I know that there are so many things out there to grab the listener's attention.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of these things, and I'm really thankful that you would spend some time listening to this. I know that there are so many choices, and we're just bombarded with like, what do I watch? What do I listen to? And I'm honored if you've spent some time listening, and if it's been helpful. I'm really hopeful, and thanks for the great work you do, HR, and the listeners, right? Like, you're not doing this if people aren't listening, and
Yeah.
I like to just acknowledge that because there's so many choices, and if you're still on at this point, like, thank
Yeah.
you.
Like to thank all three of you for
Like my mom, your mom, and then our sister, right? I mean,
we probably have a pretty good live podcast together. We might I don't want to think about that. We probably.
listen, I have no idea where my life's going. It's just getting better.
Yeah,
So
I hear you, dude.
thank
Well,
you
it was
very much.
great to see you again, dude. Spend some time, and let's hook up offline and figure something out.
I love it. Thank you so much.
You bet. Love you, Pep.
I love you. God bless you all. Thanks.
Take care.